Hey, hello, and welcome back to my AuthorTube channel. I am Autumn Ashley, and today we are going to be doing a Q2 wrap-up and what my goals are going to be for this third quarter. In this wrap-up, I am going to be discussing my writing goals, reading goals, AuthorTube, and my other social media, as well as those few little personal goals that I had mentioned at the beginning of the second quarter. And then we're going to do the same thing for the third quarter, the same categories of goals. When I go through the book portion with the books that I read and what I didn't read and all of that, that part will probably be a little long. I always have a lot to say about the books that I read. I'm gonna leave timestamps linked in the description box below so you can skip around or see how long my book section discussion is going to be. Before I dive into the individual categories of Q2, I want to give an overall feelings of how I feel like the second quarter went. The best way I feel like I could describe how the second quarter went was almost like a roller coaster. We had some high points, we had some low points, we had some parts that just felt a little stagnant. I did a lot of identifying when I felt like I was in a writing slump and getting out of that. And I feel like this was also just part of my personal life too. You know, it's just life. There's always a lot that's going on. I was productive, not as productive as I would have liked to have been in the second quarter, but overall I am pleased with how the second quarter went. Let's go ahead and dive into everything in the second quarter. So here were my writing goals for this second quarter. I am very happy to say that I hit all of these goals. I finished the outline for Project Burning Roses. I started that first draft. I continue to use writing craft books to help my writing, and I feel like when I read my writing craft books, I really take my time reading those books because I want to understand what the author is saying. I didn't quite finish that book, which I will talk about when we get to the book portion, but I did start a writing craft book, and that is one of my overall goals for the entire year. Is I want to read a writing craft book in each quarter. I wanted to watch more Brandon Sanderson lectures on YouTube, which I did, and I was able to get through the first 9 lectures. I think I skipped 1 or 2 of those lectures. I wanted to also find a few more writing podcasts. I had a few people who commented on my last wrap-up video like this that commented 99 cups of tea, I think. And then Brandon Sanderson also has a podcast. I'm sad to say that I did not dive into either of those, but I did accomplish this goal by finding more writing podcasts. And that's pretty much all of the goals that I had for writing. That feels very short and sweet. I feel like my feelings and everything towards my writing for the second quarter, I documented it fairly well in a lot of my vlogs. It did take a little while to pick up speed and to get to where I wanted to go with my writing, but I feel like I ended the second quarter very strong and ready for this third quarter. So let's go ahead and move on to my reading goals. I had these books on my list for the second quarter to read. Something I learned about me and my reading, I almost said writing, and I think I'm going to start doing this for now forward to proceed. I noticed that I had put some books on my TBR, and I think I said this in my second quarter goals and then my Q1 wrap up. I put some books on this TBR, but if they're in a series and I didn't really care for the first book, or I felt like I didn't need to read the rest of the series, that I would find other books to read in their place. I loved that. I loved that I did not force myself to finish a series that I did not care for. One thing that I did in this quarter that I also want to continue to do into the future, if I'm kind of vibing with a book that's on my shelf over here and it's talking to me and it's calling my name, I'm gonna read it. I know that's hard to say because I feel like as a reader and a writer, books are always talking to you. If I can't get one book out of my mind and I really want to read it and I'm at a place where I can go ahead and sneak in that other book, we're just gonna read it. It's all about having fun with the books that you're reading. And I'm a firm believer that if you're vibing with something, if you're vibing with a book or a TV show or whatever, just go for it. Just go for it and make yourself happy. Let's talk about the audiobooks first. The first audiobook that I listened to in the second quarter was A Touch of Darkness by Scarlett and Clair, I believe. And it is a trilogy, so she had 2 other books that followed. 2 other books, I can't remember the order, A Touch of Ruin and A Touch of Malice. I only read A Touch of Darkness. I didn't read the other 2. This was my first Hades and Persephone retelling. It was okay. If I had to give it a rating, I would probably give it 3 stars. I feel like the first 40% I really enjoyed. All of a sudden, like the last 60% was just pure spice. And I'm not a spice person. One of my other writing/reading friends had warned me about the spice, but I had thought that when I had made it about 40%, it wasn't going to be as much spice as I thought that there was in the book, and boy was I wrong. It was just okay. I'm not so much of an insta-love person, and I felt like an insta-love was present, and I don't know, I just didn't care for it. Wasn't my favorite. I understand why people do get the hype, especially if they are Hades and Persephone fans. I don't think this completely scarred me from wanting to read any more Hades and Persephone retellings. The book also ended where I felt like everything was wrapped up pretty nicely, so I didn't necessarily feel like I had to continue with the series. I felt like the other 2 books were probably just a waste of time. And the next audiobook that I listened to was Gregor the Overlander by Suzanne Collins. And you guys, this is a children's epic fantasy. I hadn't had this much fun reading a book in so long, or listening to a book in so long. The narrator did a fantastic job. The whole story was just so funny. I was laughing, I was crying. It was just an overall great time. I would rate this book 5 stars easily. This was so fun. There are, I think, 4 more books in the series, and I am going to finish all of those books. I had so much fun reading this book. Suzanne Collins, she never ceases to amaze me with her writing. I mean, she just tells such a beautiful story. Overall, it was fantastic. I can't wait to finish that series. I think I previously mentioned this, as well as mentioning this in my Q2 goals Q1 wrap-up video. If I didn't want to read A Touch of Ruin and A Touch of Malice, I would read or listen to other books in place of those 2 books. And I did. I ended up listening to Norse Mythology by Neil Gaiman. This was the first Neil Gaiman book that I read. I've never read any of his other books before. I thought this was beautifully done. This was also one of my first Norse mythology retelling or hearing it, and I loved it so much. I would love to expand and read more or listen more to that mythology. I found that very fascinating. You guys are probably gonna laugh at me for saying this. I did not know a whole lot about Norse mythology going into this, so I would be super curious to get other authors' takes on it. I'm gonna rank this also as 5 stars. It was just beautiful. He wrote it, but he also did his own narration, and I thought that was so cool. I could tell that he really enjoyed what he had wrote, because it translated a lot into him talking about it. It was just an overall great time too. So I very much enjoyed this audiobook. The last audiobook that is on my list that I have not finished, I have 5.5 hours left, I believe, of this audiobook. So I'm going to continue this on into the 3rd quarter. This book is called For the Wolf by Hannah Witten. First of all, I love this cover. This cover is absolutely beautiful. I can't remember if this is the author's debut. I'm not quite sure. I absolutely love it so far. I don't want to give it a rating quite yet since I'm not finished with it, but overall I'm having a great time. It's a Little Red Riding Hood retelling. It's so good so far, so I don't want to give a rating, but that's pretty much what it is. Let's move on to the physical books that I wanted to read for the 2nd quarter. So the books that I did read. I'm gonna do these 2 books at the same time because my thoughts and my ratings are the same for both of these. They're the same trilogy, so we're just gonna hit 2 birds with 1 stone. I continued on with the Cursebreaker trilogy, which was written by Brigid Kemmerer. A Heart So Fierce and Broken, which is book 2, and then book 3, which was A Vow So Bold and Deadly. And to be totally honest, I did not care for either of these 2 books. I love the first book. A Curse So Dark and Lonely was the first book. Absolutely awesome. I can't remember what I rated it, if I rated it in the last video, but I would probably give it 5 stars. These 2 books were probably maybe a 2.5 star. And the reason I didn't like these, the 2nd book we followed Gray. I loved him in the first book. He was such a fascinating character, and I think what made him so fascinating is because he was so mysterious. In this book, we get Gray's point of view, but then we also get some other girl's point of view. I can't quite remember her name, but she's a princess of the enemy kingdom. I didn't like the dynamic of those 2 characters. I was really upset that we only had 1, maybe 2 chapters of Ren and Harper. Everything that I felt like the author worked so hard on in the first book was completely thrown out the window when it came to this book. And it had, for sure, 110%, it had middle book syndrome. They literally traveled the entire time to get to this kingdom. It was messy, and there were a lot of things that happened in here that I did not like. I was very, very upset with some of the things that happened in this book. And then we have the 3rd book, which was just as garbage and just as much of atrocious as the second book, if not worse, because of how it ended, which I'm not going to spoil how it ended, but I was very, very upset. And one of the tropes that I absolutely cannot stand with a burning, burning passion, and I think this happened at the end of this book, is a resurrection. I hate resurrections. Kill someone and be done with it. Do not bring them back to life. Please do not. It is never okay to bring back a character. It is not. As if 2 POVs wasn't enough, Brigid Kemmerer thought that it'd be a great idea to now give us 4 POVs. 4 POVs of 4 characters that didn't want to go to war where their kingdoms were about to go to war. But they were the rulers of these 2 kingdoms. It was just nonsense. Complete nonsense. And the way it ended was absolute nonsense. That's all I'm gonna say about those. So then the next book that I read is Given to the Sea by Mindy McGinnis. And this book was the book that I was talking about that I wanted to read because I was vibing with it. It was okay. There were 4 POVs, although I felt like 2 of them were very unnecessary. We didn't really have too much of a plot in my mind. It was just supposed to follow a girl that I don't even remember her name, Koja, who when she turned 16 and when she had a baby, she was supposed to die, be sacrificed, given to the sea so the kingdoms would continue on and the sea would be happy and they wouldn't be flooded out. I felt like it was very sexist. The male characters would just talk about like such inappropriate things. The main character, she did not like to be touched. She didn't have a lot of physical attractions to people, and it was explained why in the book. And it was okay. It was weird, but I do want to continue with the series. It's only a duology, and I heard that the second book was a little bit better. I'm not sure if it follows the same character. I think it follows one of the other POV characters, if I'm not mistaken. I will probably unhaul this book when I read the second book. I have heard that the author writes great thrillers, so I would like to try a different genre. This is the only fantasy that she's ever written, this book and then the second book in the duology. I would rank this 3 stars. It was interesting. The next book on the list that I read, and I'm not going to go into too much detail about this book because a couple of my buddies and I plan on doing a live stream, I think, about this, so I want to save all of my critiques for that time. This is the first time I've ever read this book, Twilight by Stephanie Meyer, and by golly did I hate it. I absolutely could not stand this book at all, ever. It's garbage. Complete and utter garbage. But it gives me hope as a writer that if this can get published, there is hope for me one day. That's all I'm gonna say about Twilight. I didn't enjoy it. The writing style, I think, is what got me through, and also not getting hung up on a lot of the nitty-gritty things also helped me push through and finish the story. It wasn't my thing, and I went into it knowing I wouldn't like it, and I didn't. This book is the writing craft book that I was talking about earlier. I'm still working on it. I'm on page 150. Yes, I'm on page 150 of this writing craft book. It's Stephen King, a memoir on the craft on writing. I enjoy it. I love how it's broken up into parts where you get a little bit of his background, and then he gives you like a toolbox part, and then about the writing part. And currently I'm on the writing part. It's more of a slower read. It's slower than I thought it was going to be, so I probably should have started it a little bit sooner into quarter 2. I'm just going to carry this on into the 3rd quarter. Now we are to the books that were on my TBR that were physical copies, but I did not get to them. I did not get to Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte. I don't think that's right. I'm a little disappointed that I did not get to it. I don't think I'm gonna carry this book over to the next quarter though. I think we'll just leave it as a book that I haven't read yet, and then we'll just continue on and hopefully pick it up one day in the future. I am so sad with myself that I did not get to these books because they were gonna be a reread, and I absolutely love these books. I talked about this author literally 5 minutes ago, and I love these books. The Hunger Games, all 3 books. I did not get to them, and I'm really disappointed in myself. But what I'm gonna do is read these books in the next quarter. I think those were all of the books. So now we are going to move on to my authortube goals. My authortube as well as my other social media platforms. Here were my goals for authortube. I was able to achieve all of those except for passing 1.2k subscribers. That's more on my end. I was feeling absolutely way too ambitious for thinking I was going to get to that. But I was able to steadily increase, which means I have more people to follow me and to be part of my writing journey. I don't really have too much to say about authortube other than I hit those goals. I felt great about hitting these goals. So now we're going to move on to social media. Twitter, Instagram. I did absolutely nothing with Twitter. Instagram, I did great in April and May with doing posts, but June, I spent a lot more time writing than I did anything else. I don't think I've posted since like May 12th on Instagram. But you know, it's fine. I'm really not that concerned. My website, I did end up updating my authortube tab on that, my current projects tab. And I sent out a newsletter, which I'm very happy about. I try to do quarterly newsletters, but sometimes it doesn't quite work out that way. I would still like to continue to grow my newsletter to provide more writing resources and things like that. And then just real quick, here were my personal goals. I exercised or did yoga twice a week, and I was able to work on my story at least 3 times a week. I feel like I was able to eat better in this second quarter. I didn't remove meat from my diet, but I do feel like I chose more vegetarian options. I also want to say that for the exercising, when I started out the second quarter, I did very well with exercising, and I believe I was exercising like 3 or 4 times a week. It was just yoga, it was stretching and doing things like that. However, in the middle of May, I got sick, and I was pretty much down and out for the count for about 2 weeks total, but it took me a little bit of time to recover. I'm one of those people where I don't get sick often, but when I get sick, it knocks me out. And that's what happened. After that happened, I lost a lot of the momentum that I had. It took me a while to get back to doing the yoga, doing a little bit of the walking, but it's fine. Hopefully for this third quarter, I will be able to jump back onto the bandwagon. That is everything for the second quarter. Let's go ahead and start talking about this third quarter. The same categories, we're going to talk about writing, reading, social media, my website, newsletter, and a few personal goals. For writing, I would like to finish this first draft of Project Burning Roses. That's the #1 goal for this third quarter. I also want to listen to those podcasts that were mentioned to me in the second quarter. I think I want to write a short story for fun. I have no idea what kind of short story it's going to be, the genre, whatever, I don't know. I feel like one day I'm just going to wake up and be like, I want to write a short story. I had an idea maybe about a month ago for a new story, but because I'm currently working on Project Burning Roses, I didn't want to switch projects. But if I finish my first draft, what I want to do is start working on the second story. And the second story, I call it my sacrifice story. I don't really have another name for it. I want to do this next one, but I don't know if I'm going to have enough time to do this, but I want to keep this idea on the table. I want to take a writing course, maybe a master class. I know one of the local colleges, they do have creative writing courses that you can do on your own, or you can do it in the classroom, but it's all virtual, it's all online. And I feel like I would like to do something like that. That's all the writing. Let's go ahead and move on to my reading goals. I do have quite a few books on this list, but the reason I gave myself more of a variety of books is because of what I talked about earlier, where if I'm feeling like I'm vibing with a book, and I've been vibing with a few of these books for a while, I'll just go ahead and pick those books up and read them. I made this list a little bit longer than usual, but just bear with me. This is the second book to Given to the Sea. This is Given to the Earth by Mindy McGinnis. Not really sure what it's about, but I think it follows one of the other characters. The next book on my list is a trilogy. In addition to The Hunger Games, which I'm feeling ambitious about as my reread, The Hunger Games, I also want to read the Shadow and Bone trilogy. I don't think the books are that chunky. I think that will work in my favor. So I'm excited to read Shadow and Bone. I've never read them before. I feel like the covers of these books are beautiful. So I'm excited to read these books. The next book that is on my list, which I actually just recently bought this book from a used bookstore, and I think one of my reading buddies and I are going to buddy read this, but it's The Institute by Stephen King. I don't believe she's ever read this book either. It sounds like something that her and I both want to buddy read, so I would be down to buddy read this with her, and I would also like to get to this book in this next quarter. The next book on my list is Skin of the Sea by Natasha Bowen, and I'm very excited for this. I just love the cover of this book. It is just absolutely beautiful, so I cannot wait to start reading this book. It's gonna be epic. And the next one on my list is Sorcery of Thorns by Margaret Rogerson. So I'm excited for this book too. I have heard wonderful things about this book, so I cannot wait to start diving into this. I know one of my writing/reading buddies also wanted to do a reread of this. I've never read it before, but she might read it with me, so we might do this one as a buddy read as well. The last physical copy book that I have on this list is Come Back to Me by Mila Gray. I actually bought this book based off of a booktuber. She was talking about this book. She reads a lot of romance. I'd be interested to see if I like this book. I think I will, knowing as I go into it that there is going to be some spice. And now for the audiobooks that I am going to read. I would like to finish For the Wolf by Hannah Witten, and it is a duology, and the second book just came out I think in June. I would like to listen to the second book, and the second book is called For the Throne. I would like to continue on with Gregor the Overlander. There are 4 more books, so I don't think I'll get to all of those audiobooks. I did put them on here in case I felt ambitious, but I do know that the next book in the series, Gregor and the Prophecy of Bane, I would like to read at least the second book for this next quarter. And the last audiobook on this list that I would like to listen to is called Little Thieves by Margaret Owen. Those are all of the books that I would like to tackle for this third quarter. Let's go ahead and talk about my authortube goals. Those are pretty much going to stay the same. Upload a minimum of 9 content videos, host a minimum of 3 total live streams. I would like to reach a goal of 1.2k subscribers so more people can be part of the writing journey. The last one I would like to do is update my about page because I always like to keep that up and fresh. We're going to try to keep chugging along with Twitter. Whatever happens, happens. At this point, I just think it's a lost cause. Instagram, I would like to post a little bit more on Instagram, be a little more active over there. Since I recently have not been active over there, I would like to be active over there. My website, I want to keep that the same as well. Update my authortube tag and my current projects tab. I would like to work on my quarterly newsletter. For my personal goals, I'm keeping those the same. I would like to write or work on my story or any of my projects minimum of 3 times a week. I would like to exercise a minimum of twice a week. I would still like to try to eat healthy. All right, that was a very, very, very long video. Let me know one thing that you accomplished for the second quarter and what is one thing that you want to accomplish for the third quarter. I want to thank you guys so much for hanging out with me. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope this is going to inspire you to read or write more or inspire you to do something. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. Please be sure to give it a thumbs up. And if you're not subscribed to my channel and you want to be part of my writing journey, go ahead and hit that big red subscribe button. And I will see you in my next video. Bye.